What do you do when you have a close, intimate family member who has passed away and you have no place to bury them with dignity? Abraham did not yet have possession of the land. It was only the promised land, but it was not yet conquered land. So Abraham approaches those who possess the land, not those who owned it. There's a difference between owning and possessing. Some time ago, I think everyone remembers the disaster of one of our ships as it was entering the land over the skies of Texas. The state of Texas. What happened there was terrible. Many people found pieces of the spacecraft and had them in their possession, but they weren't the owners. The owner was the government of the United States. They had to return that. The fact that they had possession of the land does not mean they were the owners of the land. But they had possession of the land, not Abraham. The promised land had not yet been conquered. And Abraham approaches those who possessed at that time the land and proposes to them to buy a portion of land as a burial place for the body of his beloved deceased. And when he makes the purchase proposal, the Hittite chief offers it to him as a donation. He offers it to him as a donation, and Abraham does not accept the donation. He agrees to buy it, but not to accept it as a gift. What reasons would our father Abraham have to reject the favor of the Hittites in such a vulnerable situation as he found himself a foreigner, a wanderer without land? There is another occasion where Abraham Abinu did something similar. And then the sacred text tells us the reason why did what he did. Based on that precedent, we could assume it's the same reason why he rejects this offer from the sons of Heth. Let's look at the precedent. A war breaks out between several cities in that ancient era. Lot, Abraham's nephew, along with other men from Sodom, are taken prisoner. Prisoners of war, they are hostages of war. Upon learning this, Abraham enlists all his servants born in his house, and with the blessing of the Eternal, he sets out across that entire area to rescue the hostages. And the Torah tells us that after defeating the kings who had kidnapped his nephew Lot and other men of Sodom, they, along with his nephew Lot, took the spoils of war with them. What did Abraham do? He set aside the tithe from all the gains obtained and placed the tithe at the feet of the spiritual leader of that region, Melchizedek, king and priest of Salem. Later, the king of Sodom encounters Abraham, and this dialogue takes place as documented in our sacred Torah in the book of Genesis, where it says that then the king of Sodom tells him, "Give me the people and take the goods for yourself." So what did Abraham say to him? "Give me the people and take the goods for yourself." How did Abraham respond to the king of Sodom? He said, "I have raised my hand to the Eternal, the Most High God, Creator of the heavens and the earth, from a thread to a shoestrap. I will take nothing that is yours, so that you cannot say later, 'I enriched Abraham.'" He knew the people of that land. He knew they did not share his principles. He knew they didn't have his values. And that if he did not set boundaries, they could manipulate him emotionally as well as his descendants. The same thing with the Hittites. They were offering him a piece of land to bury Sarah. But Abraham feared that once they gave him that donation, they would remind him of it every day of his life. And telling Abraham and us, his descendants later, if it hadn't been for us, he wouldn't have even had land to bury his dead. It is clear that our father Abraham had to deal with a manipulator. Therefore, my topic today is Israel's struggle against manipulators. How can you recognize a manipulator? How to free yourself from him or her? That is the topic on the table. It is possible that some of you may currently be dealing with a manipulator. A manipulative husband, a manipulative wife, a manipulative business partner, a manipulative boss, and you know there's a problem. You know there's an issue. You feel it. You sense it. But you can't identify it to free yourself from that situation. And you feel trapped. You feel like you're trapped in a tunnel with no way out. Because I am going to put into your hands secrets by which you can recognize a manipulator and how to free yourself from manipulation. How to free yourself of the spirit of manipulation. So let's take it step by step. What is manipulation? When we talk about manipulation, what are we talking about? And who is a manipulator? Manipulate comes from two Latin words. Manus, which means hand, related to the hand, and plere, which means to fill. In other words, someone who can handle things with their hands, who can manipulate with their hands. In this way, manipulate is defined in the dictionary of the Royal Spanish Academy in 4 different ways. 3 interest us. First, the experts of the Spanish language say that to manipulate is to operate any instrument with the hands. That is the first definition. Definition of the term. The second definition of the term is to overwork something, to handle it too much, to fondle it, to touch it repeatedly. And third, skillfully intervening in the market, information, or politics with distortion of the truth to achieve particular interests. Well, it's clear in today's shiur that the definition we are going to use is the third one. The skill in business, politics, and social relationships to distort things and then use them for my own benefit. And this is what you should always keep in mind. Manipulators are experts in emotional and psychological manipulation. They are skilled in the presentation of obsessions. They are skilled in presenting arguments, skilled in persuasion, skilled in influence. Abraham has his beloved Sarah, our mother, dead. He needs a place to give her a dignified burial. He has no space to do so. The sons of Heth offer him a piece of land, but he prefers to pay for it, not to receive it as a gift. The reason is obvious. Abraham knows those people. He knows that later they will constantly remind him and his descendants of this favor. And that's why he sets boundaries and decides not to accept the gift, but to buy it instead. What are the most common characteristics of a manipulator? First, deceit. That's the first thing. Deceit. Manipulators often hide their true intentions, their true emotions behind a facade of kindness, behind a facade of sincerity. But deep down you will always encounter deceit. Second, their ability to exploit others' weaknesses. The manipulator identifies vulnerabilities, the insecurities or needs of people to use them for their own benefit. Third, the manipulator is a person who lacks genuine empathy and genuine identification with the feelings and needs of others. It might seem like they are interested in you, but in reality, they are seeking to satisfy their own interests. Fourth, control techniques, control tactics. They use a variety of control tactics such as emotional manipulation, guilt, intimidation, constant persuasion to get what they want. Fifth, role reversal. The manipulator often changes roles. Does it ring any bells? Switching from victim to victimizer, or vice versa, as it suits them, to maintain control. Sixth, be very careful maintaining secrets. The manipulator seeks to extract secrets from you, secrets from your past life, in some way, to then keep those secrets or that selective information to later control those people. He does this that I'm telling you about, because if not, you know that I know very private things about you that could compromise you. That's the typical manipulator. You have to be very careful about who you open your heart to. You have to be very careful about whom you share your intimate things with. Seventh, the manipulator is an expert in not acknowledging their responsibility. Manipulators typically evade responsibility for their actions and always blame others for the consequences of their behaviors. A victim, when they encounter a professional manipulator, is capable of ending up apologizing. When she is the victim, you are the victim. You are the one offended, or offended them. But the manipulator twists things, denies responsibility, entangles the situation in such a way that the person ends up saying, my boss is right, I'm the one who's wrong. Was it true? He was right to lower my salary because I behaved badly. This brings us to another characteristic. The manipulator is an expert in manipulating emotions, knows how to exploit people's emotions, especially how to exploit your fear. Is an expert in exploiting your fear, creating guilt and compassion to achieve their goals, all in the same pot. And finally, because time would be too long here, it's a constant pattern. The manipulator is a constant pattern. Consistency in manipulation is just like the physical abuser. When a man abuses a woman, when a husband abuses a woman, he then asks for 1,000 apologies. 1,000 apologies. And he does it again quickly. And she forgives him again. And 3 months later, he does it again. It is a pattern, a consistency in manipulation. They use this tactic systematically, repeatedly, over and over, throughout time. Why? Because they need to maintain their influence over others. That's what we see with Laban. We see it there with Laban, with Abraham's servant. We see it again as he repeats it with his own nephew Yaakov. It is a constant tendency. There is nothing more difficult than having social relationships with a manipulator like Jezebel, or like a manipulator like Laban, because his behavior is harmful, toxic, unethical, and usually lives destroying relationships. Lives destroying relationships, continually undermining trust in social relationships. Why does it happen? What is inside the mind of a manipulator? There are many reasons. Many reasons. But I will give you the following ones, which are, I believe, the most important. First, power and control. This is the first thing, power and control. When doing favors or acts of kindness for some people, they think that this way they can gain a sense of power and control over others. And then they exploit the position of doing a favor to manipulate those they perceive as more vulnerable, as more needy, and they almost always take advantage of the inequality in the relationship, especially inequality in terms of sex, of gender, in economic terms, in terms of knowledge, in terms of influence. A manipulator, whether male or female, has a delusion of grandeur. He has a delusion of control. They have a delusion of power over others. And then manipulation feeds that unhealthy delusion. That's why they do it. Right now as I speak, our people in the land of Israel, our army, our government is being manipulated by the major interests of the great power elites in the world. We are facing serious political manipulation to influence public opinion, gain political support, or achieve political objectives. And how do they do it? Through the distortion of information. How do they do it? Through deceitful rhetoric, using manipulative tactics. Observe how much misinformation and how many false news stories are spread around the world against our Israeli people. And why do they do it? Because spreading false or misleading information is an excellent strategy for manipulators to discredit and advance their agenda. Observe how they manipulate us through images and videos that depict Israel as the villain, like the devil here in Latin America. We have seen and continue to see politicians that use a polarizing, divisive discourse to mobilize their base of followers and create conflicts within society. Why? Because when you divide a nation, then, if you are in power, you can introduce new measures, new rules, new laws, supposedly to resolve the conflict, when in reality it is to fulfill your agenda. Because manipulators are experts at creating emotional narratives or exploiting the fear, anger, or empathy of their followers to always achieve their objectives. Who among us, let's be honest, who among us is not aware? How do they release advertisements that distort the truth of what is happening right now in Israel? Or that present selective information selection to create an image favorable to the interests of an elite operating in the background. always trying to portray Israel as the aggressor, not the victim, as the perpetrator, not as the victim. Who crossed whose borders? Who crossed into whose borders? What did they do? Did Israel enter Gaza to slit children's throats? Did soldiers of the Israeli army enter Gaza to violate children, to cut off their hands from children, to rape women, to kill the elderly? Did Israel enter Gaza to kidnap babies and small children and lock them in dog cages, to display them to the world and use them later as a political weapon for their own interests? Does Israel place its missiles in hospitals, in synagogues, in schoolyards, in kindergartens, in civilian neighborhoods, and spend their entire life launching missiles at Egypt, launching missiles at Jordan, sending missiles to Syria, or sending missiles to Lebanon? Have you ever heard of Israel attacking its neighbors in cold blood without any reason? Why this manipulative campaign against Israel? The only democracy in the Middle East. The only democracy in the Middle East. My friends, these are tumultuous days we are living. Day of misinformation, of manipulations left and right, of blackmail, of extortion. We must be prepared to know how to act and how to be free from the unhealthy ego of manipulators. Abraham successfully faced manipulation. Also Jacob, who at the end of the day was able to leave the house of the rich and blessed manipulator. In the same way, you will also escape the manipulator's pull if you apply the principles of liberation that I will provide to you in the next class. Remember this. You too will move forward. You too will break free from the webs of manipulators, and you will rise and emerge from there with genuine wealth and blessing. With genuine wealth and blessing. Although to achieve it, you will have to make radical decisions. Radical. Always count on the help and blessing of your Father in heaven. Happy is the person who understands this. Happy is the man and woman who can be inspired by the model of our ancestors and replicate in our own days the grace and favor of the Almighty that worked in them to bring them protection, salvation, and prosperity in the eyes of their own enemies. May this class be a source of spiritual emanation for you, of emotional strength for you that penetrates your neshama, strengthens you, heals you, frees you, and restores you completely. Amen and amen. Shabbat Shalom.